All right, y'all. We want to give all praises, glory, and honor to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son Mashiach, or Mashiach, who some call Yahweh Shai, Yeshua, Yehoshua, Yasha, Yah. We mostly know as Jesus Christ. My brother called me. He called me. He said, "Brother Phineas." Shout out to brother Eleazar, man. Y'all go over there and make sure y'all go over there to Bring It Out TV. Like, sub, and subscribe. But anyway, he hits me up and he asked me, did I see the video with our brother Priest Hakah and Divine Prospect video he put up. And he was like, man, it seems like this brother is saying that Gentiles can be joined in. It seems like he's saying Gentiles been getting joined in. And it's like, and I was like, wow, well, send me the video. He sent me the video. He sent me the timestamp on it. And we're going to examine that. I want y'all to see, I want y'all to hit the comments and let me know. Is it sound like Priest Hakah, formerly of Sakari, leader of Genesis Israelite camp group, is saying that, or is teaching or referring to natural Gentiles, heathens, cleaving and joining into Israel. Let me just let it play.
They feel like they can go back to that era, being able to eat anything. So is it anything that you can, bring out to address that, or is it that they can go back and eat anything at this point, being that the law of Moses, they're not in the land, and there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek and so forth. This is their presentation, and summed up quickly. How would you address that if I'm making sense?
Any of the mods want to tackle that? Or anybody on stage want to tackle that?
Now, this is one interesting thing about this room. You got to read the room here. I don't know who room this is. I don't know, but I do know Divine Prospect is in there. Brother Ron Shields and Priest Hakah is really the only names I'm familiar with that are in here. I'm not on Clubhouse, man. I just don't like it. It's too slow for me. I don't know what it is. I ain't too fond of it. But if it's a debate there, yes, it develops too slow for me. You got to get everybody in the room, and it take an hour before brothers can even get on the subject matter. But anyway, and so when Divine Prospect is saying, hey, anybody else want to get up and tackle this thing? Now, I could be speculating, but I am speculating, but I feel Divine Prospect is saying, let me hear what these other jokers got to say. Before I say something, let me hear what these other jokers got to say. Most of y'all know my response in here. Y'all know how I am. Y'all know but let me see what these other jokers gonna say. And so he's yielding the floor to someone else. This may be he may be connected to this room in some kind of way, maybe, or very familiar into the room. Because a lot of people wouldn't even ask, so those of that One West branch, they wouldn't even ask no question like this. Nah, they can't come in. Hey, who cares? They weren't given the law. They can't sin. All of these phrases. It wouldn't be a question asked by somebody who's come under the teachings of One West Israelism, or come under the teachings of Priest Hakah. I can't imagine somebody from Genesis or Sakari asking a question like this. So he yields the floor. And, I've seen him do this a few times. And again, for me, I feel like he's just trying to read the room. And he's trying to see if people gonna stand on what they teach. Are you gonna stand on it? What do you, or are you gonna, concede to the room? Are you gonna, conform to the ideology of the room? Or is this really what you're saying? But anyway, let me let this thing play, y'all. Hold on.
I think he asking you up. So
Oh no, no, I'm gonna pass it around. I want to hog the mic. That's what I'm saying. If anybody else wants to grab that, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I don't want the mic. He said, man, I think he asking you the mic. Nah. Nah, let me see. Let me see what these other jokers gotta say. Let me see what they gotta say. Then I'll come in. And then we make it have something to talk about.
it ain't Divine ain't the only one have to,
I mean,
answer.
I'll say something quick on that. I mean, the all of humanity is under the Noahic covenant. So like, don't drink blood, don't kill your neighbor. But when he specifies the covenants as it progresses, as they progress.
Progressive revelation. Covenant's progressing. All humanity was under the Noahide covenant. It's interesting.
To the Israelites now, if the Gentiles join to us, then they're subjugated to our codified laws.
If the Gentiles join to us, they're they obligated to keep our codified laws. It sounds like he's talking about converts. He sounds like he's talking about converts. And this is a part, when we're talking about progressive covenants, this seems like this is part of the covenant, that was given to Moses. During that time, if a Gentile converted and attached himself or came and wanted to cleave unto us, they would have to keep these codified laws. Let me go back. But maybe I'm tripping.
It ain't Divine ain't the only one have to, answer.
I mean, I'll say something quick on that. I mean, all of humanity is under the Noahic covenant. So like, don't drink blood, don't kill your neighbor. But when he specifies the covenants as it progresses, as they progress to the Israelites now, if the Gentiles join to us, then they're subjugated to our codified laws. I'll say that.
And if that is the case, could you articulate that way they become, bind to that?
Yeah, it's like
And if
if a
it's
Chinese
anything,
person
especially
moved
about
to
that dietary, because they really, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if a Chinese person moves to America, they got to keep the American laws. So if a Gentile was to be joined unto us, especially when we had our land, they wouldn't be in our land breaking our legislation.
So, being that you're not in the land, right? Scattered, through the diaspora around the planet, would they be subject to those rules at this point in time if they, join and say they, going to keep the same faith?
Absolutely, yeah. Even
Oh,
without the land, if they're joined to us, I'll give you an example.
Let
so, being
me
that
go
you're
back.
not in the land, right? Scattered, through the diaspora around the planet, would they be subject to those rules at this point in time if they, join and say they, going to keep the same faith?
Absolutely, yeah. Even
Oh,
without the land, if they're joined to us, I'll give you an example. In the kingdom of heaven, they're gonna have to keep that dietary law. In Zechariah 9, it says that he's gonna take the abominations out of the mouth of the Philistines. But wait a minute, they're not.
And even that, I had to look at that, I let them slide with it, because I haven't went and looked at it, and that's not the main part of this, of what we trying to gather, glean from this video. but I'll take the abominations out. The abominations aren't just food. With me just coming off the dome, but I will have to look at it and see if the context is just, um, you know, kind of giving us the hint that, hey, you know what, I'm talking about food here. But abominations is a lot of things. A lot of things are disgusting to the Most High, like homosexual activity. All right. And it could be pork. It's an abomination. It could be the dietary, but I'll have to look at it and see. But I'm not mad at it, unless I go and I see something where it's directly talking about something. But I'm not mad at that. But you have to look into it, and I will pray that brother looks into that. Also, just don't take nobody's word. Go back and look at it. It sounds good. It sounds like, hey, you know what? But just go double check it. Always go behind. I don't care how long brother's been in this thing.
Israelites. So in the kingdom of heaven, all nations, kindreds, and tongues will be subjugated and subject to the law, statutes, and commandments.
All nations. And for him to use that all nations, all kindred and tongue, man, we fight against that so much. Nah, that all nations, kindred and tongue, when he said, I seen them dressed in all white, and these other people with all kindred, all nations, all tongue, and revelation. And we fight tooth and nail trying to make that Israelites. That's because we were there, we were all, If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Let me pull it back a little more.
Just let it legislation.
Play. So, being that you're not in the land, right? Scattered, through the diaspora around the planet. Would they be subject to those rules at this point in time if they, join and say they, going to keep the same faith?
Absolutely, yeah. Even without the land, if they're joined to us, I'll give you an example. In the kingdom of heaven, they're going to have to keep that dietary law. In Zechariah 9, it says that he was going to take the abominations out of the mouth of the Philistines. But wait a minute, they're not Israelites. So in the kingdom of heaven, all nations, kindreds, and tongues will be subjugated and subject to the law, statutes, and commandments. Again, I'm referencing Zechariah chapter 9, which is kingdom connotation, that he's going to take the abominations out of the mouth of the Philistines. So that's an example you could use as well.
And he's using verses that are, talking about cleansing heathen. Now that I heard him say it again, directing that directly to the Philistines. Has deacon, is he beginning to teach, salvation for these Gentiles? Now you can't say he's not saying that they're not there, because he's saying all kindred and tongue in the kingdom of heaven, all kindred and tongue in the kingdom of heaven will be subject to the law. Then he has to be referring to that Revelation 7:9. It has to say that those people are heathen.
Appreciate. But go ahead, Divine.
Yeah, and that's the same way. That's the same way today, Tom. Just to give like a secular example, if you live like I grew up in New York, right? Whenever I went to East Brooklyn, I had to pass through the Jewish community before I got to the hood. You know what I'm saying? So if I went to the Jewish community and say, "Yo, I'm gonna set up a deli on the corner, and I'm gonna sell some ham hocks," what do you think is gonna happen? So when you're in that community, right, especially if there's a synagogue or place of worship, it's called the Knesset. The Jews are going to ensure that you are following things line by line. Now, mind you, they're not the state authority there. They're not the county authority there. But in their community, they run ish. So if you decide you're going to do something, it would be best for you to check in with them before you try to set up shop. So it's the same way in the kingdom. Any of the Gentiles that's going to cleave unto us, they also have to submit to the laws of God. You know why? Because they're going to willingly want to do it. Hey, can somebody get me Micah real quick? Let's take
And then divine comes in and say, you know why? Because they willingly gonna want to do it. All right, and that there is another is a is another narrative that's opposing to that one West view of what that's going to look like. And he goes to the verse in Micah 5, I think.
Look real quick. I'm gonna show you real quick in Micah chapter 4. Somebody give me Micah chapter 4 real
Micah
quick.
4.
Yeah, I'll grab it. I got some precept also, if you indulge me after you make your point.
Yep, you
Um,
got it afterwards. Yep. Micah 4,
con,
start at verse 1.
let me get there. Micah 4, this is a powerful verse. Micah 4 and verse 1. But in the last days shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountain, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it.
So it's the word I mean for peoples, and people shall flow to it. Keep going, verse 2.
And many nations shall come and say, come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and he will walk in his path. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the
So this
word of the Lord.
Yeah, so the word here is goyim, and that's the word plural for other nations, right? So these are going to be other Gentiles outside of the Israelites, outside of the wayward Israelites. Other nations are going to come to the mountain. So they willingly come into the mountain, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may what? What is he going to do there? Verse 2.
Verse 2. And many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he would teach us of his ways,
Mm-hmm.
and we will.
See, Deacon knew that. He knew divine was he taught in this manner. This was he knew divine's what he thought about how he interpreted text and how he actually the place of the Gentiles and in kingdom, where the Gentiles gonna be, what they gonna be doing. He knew that divine taught this. He knew divine's doctrine pretty much.
Walk in his path, for the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
There you go. So that means we know in the latter days, in the last times, they're going to willingly want to seek Yah and Yahweh. They're going to willingly want to do that. They're going to seek his path, seek his ways. And therefore, because they're seeking, the law is going to come forth from out of Zion. That law is inclusive of the dietary law. Read verse 3, brother.
And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
Jump to verse 5.
Con.
Anyway, that was it, y'all. That's pretty much all I want to just show you the uh our brother Deacon and him going in. And like I said, it sounded like to me that he's saying that these Gentiles, he's speaking on, and evidently it sounded that way to Divine Prospect because he lammy backed on Priest Hakah's breakdown. When he answering the brother's question about how do we deal with Gentiles, asking us, do they have to keep the dietary law? And them saying, hey, well, there's neither Greek or Jew, da 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 da. And he, and I'm in agreement with him. But that's different. And all praises for that's it. Sounds different from me though. It sounds like brother is teaching something a little different. And it's not only me. Not only did it sound different to Divine Prospect, but also to my brother Eleazar who sent me the video. Pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. Shalom. Y'all hit the comments and let me know what y'all think. Did it sound like he's teaching converts and proselytes and heathen cleaving to Israel, and you know even them receiving salvation, being inside of the kingdom, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments alongside Israel. Tell me what y'all think. Hit the comments, let me know.